Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining me for this conversation. I'm really excited to have it on stage because this whole conference is about leadership, and I don't think you would have leadership without innovation. And you each are in STEM in some capacity. We have two representatives from the healthcare industry, one from space and one from tech and video and live streaming and all that good stuff. So I'm going to shut up because they're way more interesting than I am. But innovation can mean something different to every person sitting in this room. So I'd like to start off by asking you, what does innovation mean to you and in your career?
So at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, for me, innovation is understanding what the barriers are, what the big problems are, and being able from my bully pulpit to tackle them, and to have the force of a big group behind it, and to explain that mission so that others want to help you make that happen.
All right, well, first of all, thank you guys for having me. It's an honor to be here as the NASA representative, and so it's a very different crowd than I'm used to talking to. So I promise I won't bore you with too much space stuff since we're talking about innovation. But at a fundamental level, flying in space is about innovation, right? When I talk to groups, it's mostly technical and technological innovation. But two things for you guys to think about, and what innovation means to me is to bring the barrier of entry for humans to go to space down, so that it's not just NASA or large countries, so that you or even your children, if you don't want to, can someday go to space. And so that'll truly be the innovation where there's enough money, there's enough partnerships, and there's enough interest. And so that's what I'm excited about and why I'm here to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. This is an awesome panel. I never get to also speak on a panel with such a diverse group of people. So at Maven, as the founder and CEO, when we think about innovation, when we started the business 5 years ago, there's clear gaps in care when it comes to women's health and family health. And so we really thought, how do you revolutionize care delivery? How do you fill those gaps with access to providers, better information? And so we built a virtual clinic where you get access to over 20 different types of specialists across clinical behavioral and wellness, from OBGYNs to career coaches, where you can talk to them at any time, whether it's about areas like infertility, pregnancy, miscarriage, returning to work after having a child. So that was the first part. And then the next part, which is really hard in healthcare, is to find an innovative business model, because healthcare is a tough industry to work in. And so the way that we are now delivering the care is we work with companies and health plans to offer fertility and maternity benefits to their employees. So we're really proud to support a lot of companies from Fortune 50s to small tech companies globally, and we're only just getting started.
So I'm Anjali, I'm the CEO of Vimeo. Vimeo is a video technology company. Our mission is to empower creators to tell their stories. And it's interesting, as a technology company, for me, innovation is about the simplest and most fundamental solution to a problem. And it doesn't always have to be the most complex, fancy technology. It really is, to sort of echo some of the themes I heard here, it really is about lowering barriers to entry and really solving that problem. And for us, actually, the problem we're focused on right now is a new class of creators that are coming online, and actually probably many of the people in this room, which is really small businesses, marketers, organizations who now want to have full-blown video strategies online and are using video as sort of the primary way that they communicate. And how are we, through technology, lowering those barriers so that you don't have to be necessarily a filmmaker or a video professional to be able to tell beautiful stories with video, to be able to create and distribute video the way that you want. So that's the way we think about it, and it's always something in the tech space. There's always tons of jargons and cool algorithms being thrown out there, but from my experience, it's usually just how are you really solving a problem that matters.
I appreciated what you said about the simple, because sometimes finding the simple solution is the hardest. Just like in writing short is harder than writing long.
Yeah.
So with that, how do you instill a mindset of innovation and finding the right and simple solutions? I know at Vimeo you've talked about some hackathons and some programs you have, but I'd love to hear what each of you are doing, but let's start with Vimeo.
Yeah, I mean, I think, everyone has different mechanisms. I think probably the biggest lesson is, you can't just rely on it happening organically, and it often behooves you to create those processes and structures. At Vimeo, we have Vimeo Jam, which is our hackathon, and one of the things that we've done is we used to make those about build cool projects, and we'll actually put them on the roadmap, and they'll get, we'll actually end up building them. And what we actually did was we changed that to explicitly say, it doesn't have to be related to our business. It doesn't have to be anything that could ever make it on our roadmap. Actually use this time away from your day-to-day to think about something completely out of the box. Work with people you haven't worked with. Work with the team in an office in another country who you're never going to interact with otherwise. That has been an interesting and effective channel for us to unlock more creativity, which is often really important for innovation.
At Maven, we're almost 100 people, and one of the things about scaling a technology company is that it changes almost every 6 months. It feels like we're almost a new company. So at this stage, unlocking innovation from my team members, it's not about kind of trying things as fast as possible and just learning, because we do have a product and it works, and we have lots of big customers. And so now it's, what we really focus on is developing a high performance culture with a growth mindset. So where there's a lot of feedback, there's a lot of transparency. And so, everyone should be able to speak their ideas. There should be a culture of dissent. And so we're working on that. How do you build a high performance culture alongside the values of the business, which are a little bit softer, keeping healthcare human, being positive, being collaborative with your teammates, doing right by Maven, to, how do you put your clients first? How do you, drive for results? And so it's this, this dance that we talk a lot with the team about as we kind of foster, what it's like to scale from, the next 100 to the next 200 people.
Yeah, so for me, I'll probably answer it two ways, and the first is the technical way, right? So NASA loves to solve complex problems. It's one of our core competencies. Who doesn't like a really good complex problem? But the thing we do trying to make it simpler is just to think about contingencies, right? What can go wrong? And so what that means to us is how many parts does an engine have, and how many people touch those parts, and how many parts could break. You could think about it from a supply chain perspective for those of you that own businesses. And so we really put a lot of thought into thinking about what we call the next worst failure, what can go wrong, and then try to make that footprint as small as possible. Because even though we like complex problems, keeping the design simpler, even if that's a space engine, is a very smart thing to do. The other perspective is the people perspective, and you were kind of hitting on it, right? And so, the space industry is really changing, like many of your industries, and so we're really trying to think about people who have the skills for what's in the future. We're excited to be headed to the moon, and we've not done that in a while, and we've not done it with today's technology and today's capabilities, and so that's going to require solutions, and we don't actually know what they are yet. And so it's hard to know the type of people you need and the skills you need when you don't exactly know what the future is, right? So we're really focusing on capacity of people. It's a different way to look at a resume. Instead of I showed up and gave a presentation, therefore you must be good at presentations. How do you look for the capacity of a person who could do that, even if they may have not yet had the opportunity to show that to you? And so we've been driving a lot of innovation into our processes for the people that we find so we can build the best team.
So at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, we're really, I guess you guess by the name, that we're dedicated to blood cancers. And I think that, that we have people who are incredibly devoted to the mission, right? That many people have a connection to it. It's 1 degree of separation or no degrees of separation. And with that, you have to pair that with skill sets and say, you're passionate about this, but you need to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And we need to be able to say, just because this is the most important thing in the world to you, that is not what you're good at. And really recognizing what people are capable of, what they're good at, and making sure that's what they're doing. And if we don't have the skill set in the group, figuring out how to find that skill set. And I think just because you have a title after your name or you have a degree in a certain area doesn't mean that that's the right thing for you to be doing. And all the passion in the world for doing the right thing, and I just can't even tell you how, you're not making the biggest salary at a not-for-profit, right? So how do you engage the people to be that passionate for your mission? Well, it's because they really feel it strongly, and it's very hard to say, you're terrible at that. We need you to do something differently. We need you to put that passion into something else. And I think as a leader, that's really what you need to understand, is what people are good at and directing them towards that while still not squelching their desire to help in a mission that is critically important.
The people question is such a huge part of innovation. Innovation doesn't happen in a silo. And that extends to partnerships. And I'm curious because there's partnerships that can then get competitive. And particularly within some of your industries, you want to be the first to cure cancer. You want to be the youngest CEO or the first founder to the unicorn founder in the women's health space, what have you. So how do you navigate partnerships in each of your work that helps fuel innovation?
Who wants to start?
Whoever wants to start, or we can.
I mean, I can start. So, space is interesting. NASA has been kind of the leader in space for many, many years, right? In some ways, kind of a monopoly, right? Where we've got all the subject matter experts, and that's very much changing as space spreads all over the globe, and certainly commercially to companies as well. You've heard of the SpaceX's and the Blue Origins and that type of thing, right? So we partner with each one of those, companies, countries. We've been flying the International Space Station a long time, and so each one of them is actually very unique. I mean, you think everybody builds a rocket, everybody builds a space vehicle, but their cultures, their priorities, their core competencies are all slightly different. And so we've learned, mostly through trial and error, to approach the value they bring and the value NASA brings, and to try to put it together, as opposed to originally having a little more of a hierarchy where you think of sort of NASA as this hierarchical thing and then they show up. There's still a little bit of that, but it's starting to change where it's a little bit more of the partnership and nodes. You get the friction because there's overlap in core competencies, or there's overlap in belief that you have core competencies, right? And so it takes a while for everyone to realize what they're good at, and more importantly, what they're not good at, and sort of sort out where all of those different core competencies meet to make the big picture, right? Getting to the moon, getting to Mars is difficult. Everyone needs to bring their best capabilities to get us there. It's not something you can really do completely independently on your own as a company or a country, as you've seen with the way NASA's partnering. And so the friction and the tension is challenging, but ultimately it helps you sort out who's good at which part and creates better and stronger partnerships. And we see that today with the International Space Station, and then with the way we're putting together the moon architecture.
Yeah, you said that so diplomatically, that everyone comes together having potentially overlapping competencies, or they think they do. And so the same thing works in healthcare. I mean, for us, our goal is to get our product in the hands of as many women and families as possible. And so it's easier to do that through large partnerships with either employers or health plans than it is kind of brick by brick and individual by individual. And plus, we want it to be free for our members, and so we need payers to pay for it. So I think that for us as well, it's making sure that we understand what the partner brings to the equation, what they want from us. We're still the baby startup in this kind of land of healthcare giants. And we do have a lot of things that they lack. They need digital solutions, big network, virtual care, a way to talk to and work with millennials that large health plans and health systems don't totally understand. And so I think it's just, though, always being really respectful and knowing that it's not about disrupting the system that you work in when it comes to partnerships. If you really want to innovate in it, it's about figuring out the best way to partner, and then figuring out how to align yourselves on the same team, and then and that's how we've approached it.
I think for Vimeo, actually, I think our partnership strategy has probably been one of the more innovative things that we've done, which is we actually have turned our biggest competitors into our partners. So for over a decade, Vimeo's #1 competitor has been YouTube. And the reality is we used to, the number one question I would get from creators is, where do I put my video? Do I put it on Vimeo or YouTube? And one day you sort of wake up and realize, well, your audience is everywhere. Why are we even asking ourselves that choice? And so what we ended up doing was actually building a partnership with YouTube to help our creators get natively publish their videos to YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, and basically to all of our competitors. And we did that because the intent was, how are we really going to help creators succeed? And what it unlocked was actually a totally new strategy for us as a company, where now we see ourselves as this agnostic distribution platform, and it's actually become one of the biggest value adds in our product. And it all came from sort of flipping the script in terms of how you think about whether someone's a competitor or partner, and just prioritizing the problem you want to solve.
So I don't think anyone with an MD after their name is going to be the first at anything. There are no Doogie Housers in this world. We really are the last to do everything because we're still in school while all of you are doing incredibly great things. So it's more important to be the most impactful. And I think that you know, in the medical field and in the science field. And so I think it was really important for LLS to realize what our strength was, and that is that we are able to be innovative without having a financial stake in the outcome. So we are able to create some very innovative clinical trial models where we hold the IND. We are the sponsor of the trial. And we work with partners in the pharma industry, we work with the FDA, we work with the National Cancer Institute, and they see us as an honest broker because we don't have that financial gain if a drug becomes a new agent in cancer. Our only gain is if the patient gets better, right? So understanding the power of that was really important for our company to say we can really affect change because we're not encumbered by any ulterior motive.
That's an interesting point. Usually it's money helps drive innovation.
Yeah, no, and I think, not to say we don't need money, of course we do, we're a not-for-profit. And we fundraise every year to make the money to do what we're doing. So I don't want to say that the dollars aren't important, but it isn't that our dollars are invested in order to get more dollars back. They're invested so that people will say, this is an organization that does great things, I want to give them money.
Well, I mean, that part, I know I'm going out of order, but that part resonates with me. Obviously, I work for the federal government, right? So NASA's a government agency. We do get money, but we have a tremendous responsibility to give back to, you know, all of you here and the entire human spaceflight community. So, you know, our innovation really stems from the mission, right? And people have talked about that, but you know, people come to NASA because it's cool, but they stay because they care, right? That's what we talk about. And so that's really where your base innovation comes from, because we're not making money either, and there's lots of other places you could probably, you know, go out in the world and make more, certainly on an individual level. So that part, it's a different type of innovation than what many people here have talked about today, where, you know, there's a monetary sort of return on investment.
I want to tie some of the panels together a little bit. Earlier, Esther spoke about when you don't have everything, that actually drives creativity and innovation, and that really resonated with me. So what is a moment that each of you has found yourself lacking in something, and in turn, that missing piece or pieces drove an important innovation?
So I've been thinking about it since you asked, so I can start with this one. So basically, in women's health, it was really, really hard to raise money in the first 2 to 3 years of the business. So we were scrappy. I mean, we honestly recruited our first users in parks in New York City because it was free. And so one of the things that we did early on, which turned into actually a great innovation, and we still do it today, is we wanted to be able to educate and market about our mental health products. So we have the largest maternal mental health network in the country. We have over 300 providers in it. And so we didn't have the money to advertise. And so we thought, okay, what can we do to communicate the value of this? And then if one of the core issues about online therapy is, oh, well, am I really gonna like the person, and is the quality of the therapist really good? How do we solve for that, and how do we solve for all of this with no money? And so what we created was this thing called therapist speed dating, where we would basically, we did this big promotion where we launched through a lot of partnerships for free. And we said, try therapist speed dating on Maven. You can try 5 therapists, 10-minute appointments for free. And you can see which one you like, and then pick the one you like, and then book your appointments with it. And so it was such a wild success. Time magazine wrote about it. We got users writing like this was the best thing ever. We saw the conversion to actually developing long-term relationship with the therapist that we built it in, and we continue to do this.
Look, I think probably the common theme is that innovation and creativity is often born from constraints. And I think maybe probably the most relevant example from Vimeo in recent history is when I stepped in as CEO and we shifted our strategy. And the reality is we had to. We were for years pursuing a strategy to actually invest in content, and we were going to compete with Netflix. And we did not have anything near the budget that Netflix and Hulu and Amazon have. And for years we had pursued this strategy. We had teams built around it. And then the world changed, and everyone was spending billions of dollars on content. And Vimeo, as this little indie network, we just didn't have a chance. And so that was actually really the thing that made us say, hold on, like, what else do we have that's really valuable and that's useful? And that's when we realized, well, we have this technology. We have this amazing technology, and all these creators have been using us. Why don't we make that our strategy? And suddenly, as we looked at the numbers, we realized it was a huge market. No one was focused on the creators. Everyone was focused on the audience and the content and chasing eyeballs. And there was this huge business opportunity. But I remember, that time when you're really feeling like, what are we going to do? What kind of company are we going to be? What's our future going to be? And it's until you go through that pain of not being sure and trying to uncover every rock, that's sometimes when you find the most interesting things.
I recognized when I came to LLS that we had a great pediatric research portfolio, but that there have only been 4 drugs approved for pediatric cancer. That's pediatric cancer, not just leukemia, since the 1980s. Wow. And there are only approximately 10 drugs that are labeled, they're adult drugs labeled for kids with cancer, which means that all our pediatric investigators who were coming up with these brilliant ideas, they were never getting translated to actually getting to be agents that kids and their parents and their doctors could access and utilize. And all the successes that we were seeing were from supportive care and incremental benefits in how we use the drugs. And I recognized, because I had been a pharma executive prior to coming to LLS, that the business case for pediatric development, because thankfully it is a rare disease, will never be positive. And so it drove me to say, I understand what the problems are. And I heard all these pediatric scientists say, oh, the companies won't give us the drugs. And it's like, we need to make the business paradigm different so that it is more efficient, it works for everyone. And we have to assume that people deep down, especially when it has to do with children with cancer, have the right intent, but wrong things get in the way. And so understanding the pieces that fit into that puzzle helped me create a program that we hope starting next year will be a master trial for pediatric leukemia with new agents for children.
That's terrific.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure I can follow that, because that's amazing. It's interesting, we don't actually use the word innovation as much as you would think. We use the word risk a lot, right? So innovation and how much tolerance you have to risk and how you manage risk. And so innovation is all about change, and change is fundamentally all about how much risk you can take, right? With your money, with your company. You were talking about speed dating. Did you think it was going to work that well? Maybe, maybe not, you know, right? I mean, you don't know. And so you have all these ideas. So if you think about, many of you guys are the entrepreneurial types who are looking for the holes and the niches in the market, you know, and then there's the big folks out there. You're talking about the big folks, right? And we're kind of the opposite. We're the big folks, and then all of the new spaceflight companies are kind of you guys. And so innovation and change and risk, we used to own the entire thing sort of vertically integrated, right? If you guys have heard that term, where you launch the rocket and you fly the spacecraft and you fly the space station. And then along comes change in our industry, where now SpaceX has a vehicle, and Boeing is going to have a vehicle, and Blue Origin's building a vehicle, and all of those people represent change. And so we had to figure out how to fly in space safely with them, how to manage that risk. But born of that was just a tremendous amount of innovation in just every way you can think of. Relationships, partnerships, you know, interactions with other companies, how you prioritize technical decisions, how you spend money. I mean, the list goes on. And so if you kind of map it out, you know, the entire industry is in the middle of this, you know, big example of innovation. So that's how I think about it.
With the time we have left, we have a wide range of ages and experiences on this stage, and this came up in the prep call, and I actually thought it was really interesting. So how have each of you used your age to drive innovation? Have you felt like as you're younger, you're more innovative, or as you've gotten older, you've gotten more creative? How should our audience think about using their age to drive innovation?
Well, I'll start because I'm the oldest.
We're in order. It might be in order.
Yeah, I don't know that I was different in terms of innovation, and I thought a lot during my many careers, because it's only now that I've been working for more than 30 years that I could say that every 10 years, I don't know why, but I had to switch jobs. And I used to think, oh gosh, I'm a dilettante. You know, I don't want to be the head badly enough. What's wrong with me? I'm not a good feminist. I'm not a good, you know, I let other. No, I listened to it and I changed the jobs, even though I chastised myself. And it's only now that I look back on that 10-year itch. And said it was because there was something you weren't able to do that you saw needed to be done, or that you could do more. And it's only now that I recognize that all those pieces fit perfectly for the job I have. So I was a doc, right? I practiced. I was a teacher at Columbia, so I was an educator. I was a pharma executive, so I understand the pharma industry. I was a researcher, and now I get to supervise all those areas, and I can talk the talk. And so I can be more innovative because I get what the roadblocks are that are keeping people from doing what we really want to see happen in the health industry, which is start making it for the people and not for the business. And you can't do that without that knowledge. So I think it's great to be older.
Let's see, so for me, you know, being the chief flight director, I'm responsible for all of NASA's human spaceflight operations, right? So that sounds like a you know, big gobbledygook, so think mission control in Houston. And so I've just now gotten to the point of, you know, sort of having that credibility, you know, 10,000 hours, our industry, certainly technical industry, space industry, you know, you have to have quite a bit of time in the chair before folks will listen to you, right? And so I've kind of gotten to that point. So sitting in this room, I might look older. When I go into a room filled with space people, still not as many women, and still I'm relatively young, certainly to hold this position. So that question is actually hard for me to answer because I'm kind of living in this middle space, right? Where now I have the ability to have this platform and to really innovate. But one of the reasons I come and meet people like you guys is to get, you know, ideas and ways to translate back into the industry, because there's a whole bunch of people who are older than I am who've really only seen it done one way for a really long time, and I have the benefit of having at least some outside perspective and influence and experience, and so I consider that kind of my mission to drive that back into the system. I would not claim that I've figured it out in the year I've had this job yet, but I do feel like there's a tremendous opportunity to innovate in the spaceflight industry, human spaceflight, and the similarities across all of the different industries in terms of the skills you can learn are actually just amazing and shocking, and something I didn't understand and have just discovered in the last year. So, you know, all of what you guys are doing is totally relevant to me. So.
I have 2 kids, so they're 2 and 1. My son's almost 3 though, so it's not as like 12 months apart. That would be really brutal, but it's still pretty brutal. So basically, I'm the only mother and maybe the only parent operating a company in my industry, bringing better kind of fertility and maternity benefits to corporate America. So when we built our network and we included people like women's health physical therapists, if anyone in this room has had children and you've recovered from childbirth, you know that is a process that nobody really talks about. Our women's health physical therapists always say, like, no woman should pee when she sneezes. That's just like, you can recover from that. And I think that obviously, like living the experience that I'm living right now as a young mom, I've been able to leverage that to Maven's product roadmap's advantage, because I understand what our patients and members are going through, because I am one. I've used Maven now through 1 miscarriage and 2 pregnancies. And so I think that it's just been great to be able to, I mean, it's partly why I did choose this market and this product, and I'm even more mission driven than I was 5 years ago when we started, is I actually really understand what's going on, and so I do feel like I authentically, and my team authentically, can actually make calls on what's right.
So I joined Vimeo 5 years ago as a director of marketing with a team of 5, and became CEO 3 years later with no direct experience. And it was partly because I had been championing a new strategy that we ended up going with. But I stepped into the role sort of very acutely aware of the things I didn't know. And I would say, in sort of working for a large global company, I'm often, not many people in the boardroom look exactly like me, so I'm often in a situation where I'm sort of reminded by a lot of cues that I might not have the experience, or I might not necessarily check all the boxes. And what I would say is, I've tried to do 2 things. One is see my maybe lack of experience as an advantage, and by that I mean we are trying to innovate. There's no playbook for the market. It's a new market. The product and the technology we're offering is new. The business model is new, and the kind of company we want to be and the kind of team we want to build is new. And so the fact that I'm not anchored on a playbook or preconceived notions about what is true or not true means that I can often question things, and maybe I'll see something that someone else won't see. So I try and see that as an advantage. The other thing is, you also have to be self-aware about what you don't know. And you have to surround yourself with people who are going to bring perspectives that supplement your weaknesses, and that are going to be real with you and tell you when you have no idea what you're talking about. And it's important. I come from a marketing background. I lead a tech company. So most of my workforce are engineers. And if I did not have on my leadership team strong technical voices who know when to tell me that you don't know what you're talking about, we could make really bad decisions. And so I think for me, it's the balance of those 2 things. It's being self-aware about what you don't know, but also not letting your inexperience stop you from making good decisions and having the confidence in your gut.
That's a great point, and we only have 2 minutes left, and in those last 2 minutes, I want to pick up on the confidence point. For anyone in this room who's feeling stuck, they're writer's block, brain block, they don't think of themselves as innovative, they don't have the confidence, what is one tip you would give them to get past that block and find an innovative solution and achieve their innovation?
Talk to another woman. Just that simple. When you feel like you're inadequate in some way, find another woman to tell you, what are you talking about? It makes all the difference in the world.
Mine would be, find a piece of your environment that you don't know a lot about, maybe on the fringes, and go and dig into it and learn it, because it will reframe your problem. A couple years ago, I met a bunch of fire Department of New York guys right here in New York, and realized that they make life and death mission critical decisions just like we do. And it was a very, unique experience, and taught me that you can reframe it, and it just helped me drive solutions. So I'd find somebody like that in your industry and go dig and talk to them, and it'll help you.
Read a book or sleep?
I'm all for sleep. Sleep.
Young mom, yeah.
I'd say find something you're passionate about. So many young women that I speak to are always like, I feel like I need to do this or I need to do that. And I can tell you, as someone who's like probably innovated in my own career, kind of made it up. But I can tell you, like, if you're not passionate about the idea or the space that you're in, it's going to be really hard to be innovative and make an impact. So, like, find something that you really care about. And I think a lot of the rest will sort of happen.
Those are some excellent suggestions. We were so lucky to have you on stage. Thank you so much, each of you, for your thoughts. Thank you.